Welcome to Ask Cadence, everybody. My name is Pete Wright. I am sitting around the table with John Patton once again. John.
Hello, Pete. Good to see
Hello.
you.
Good to see you as well. And Scott Lissit.
Good morning, Pete.
The topic today continues our discussion on methodology, implementing a methodology that we started so many weeks ago. This one, I think, is one that is particularly appropriate to those who are interested in developing their methodology. It really is, what is the time that you need to invest to implement a methodology, and how do you actually go about it from an organizational perspective? John, where do you start?
Okay, Pete, I'll give you the short answer right off the bat. It takes about a year. But realize that in this one, we don't have a project team working that whole year invisible to the organization and delivering the methodology at the end of the year. That's not where we want to go. There are two phases in this. One is in standardizing and documenting the methodology, and that can take anywhere from 60 to 90 days. The longest time I've seen it where a team could maintain focus is about 6 months. And then, and you're doing some of the implementation as a part of that standardization and documentation. You can get training going and you can have people participating, using the skills, up to them while you're standardizing. But then the second phase is to create the plan for implementation and make sure that all of the elements of practice that you plan to have are going in. And that takes a minimum of 6 months. After that, we consider the methodology to be implemented, and then you're into your cycles of continuous improvement. So how does a person really get started? Let's say I'm the CEO, I've come from a company that has used this before. Well, it's a lot easier. I've got to sensitize the organization, and then it becomes one of the projects on this year's list of things to do in bringing improvements to the organization, which every CEO wants to do. Let's take the complete opposite, where I'm a new hire, and I've been in another company, and I see that there's a real opportunity for improvement in this organization. In that case, you're going to have to sensitize the organization to benefits. And we always recommend that you do so by setting a very good example that causes people to come around and say, you handle projects pretty well. Did you do them that way in your other company? And your answer is going to be yes, and there's nothing stopping us from doing the same thing here. Happy to share my skills with all of you and even get professional help. But usually the first step is some sort of evaluation of the practice level of an organization. Where are we today, and what are the opportunities for improvement, really? And we got to tie those to bottom line impact benefits, because this is going to need higher level management authorization and really sponsorship. So we get authorization to do the evaluation first, and then we go for the sponsorship of the overall project. And we like to see the methodology implementation be at least, let's say if a company has 75 projects on their overall list, that it needs to be at least in the top 15. It has to be significant enough in the organization that they'll focus on it and get it done. Now, once you get sponsorship, it's very important that the project manager be selected, a person who really believes and has the persistence of getting it done, and then that person collect a team of positive-oriented believers in project management. It's hard enough to get this all going in any organization, and we're going to convince the people who resist, good practices later. So we always start with the people who are believers, make sure that they understand whatever implementation they're going to be putting in by getting the right training, and then creating a project plan for the first phase. Now, in that project plan for the first phase, key elements are creating governance. This steering team that I talked about in a previous episode, in the most informal sense, of director level people who are responsible for this initial standardization and documentation. They may even assign people to get it done. Some may participate in the project. And then it's monitoring and continuous improvement. So they also do prioritization. We start the standardization project, and that's going to be evidenced in a guide for project management for our company. We get that guide signed off, and then it's on to implementation.
Well, and concerning that guide, this then becomes a single reference source for how projects should be managed.
That's right, Scott.
And so if somebody gets assigned a new project to manage, they're going to want to consult the guide and find out what they're supposed to do in the company, what are the processes they should follow, and how to implement them.
Right. We also want to make sure that this guide that's put together is flexible and adaptable to the size, risk, and complexity of the project. When we help companies on this, one of the things we very strive to achieve is that the resulting document, when printed, because you may have it online, but if printed, is not more than a 1/4 inch thick and contains no more than 100 pages. And this is to dissuade those who think we're going to have volumes of methodology here, not in a project management methodology. Now, in a product development methodology, which focuses on how you do the work, that can be more detailed. But a project management methodology is focused on how you set up and manage the doing. So we want to keep that not overblown and overdone. And so there's continuing to finish up the governance. We have some metrics, we like to see in the governance, and then setting up the services like project control. If you have any kind of supportive PMO, making sure that projects are all getting planned, that the projects all have project managers, that the organization is now moving the project through the life cycle, and establishing the training. I reference our own work. One of the things we make sure we put in the introduction to any project guide is that this is not a substitute for training. This is a reference guide for application after training and refreshing oneself.
Yeah, and we also want to make sure that necessary product development processes are integrated with project management in the guide, so that people don't feel like they need to pick up 2 separate guides to figure out how to run a project if you're developing a product.
It cross-references, I think. We want to limit. I have never seen, Scott, a standard that does both. Mm-hmm. There are some product development or systems development life cycle things that focus on the doing, and they say they do project management, but you go in there and it's never really all about project management. So
maybe the word is that they need to be integrated.
Yes, compatible.
Yes.
Okay, so that there is a rationalization, and people know when they're doing the work versus when they're planning and administering the work and reporting and controlling the work. Control in a positive sense here. So there's in a mature organization, that's well understood, and the role of the project manager is well understood. In a organization with fewer practices, that has to be developed.
I'll cut this out. Is this the last section of the methodology discussion?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So, John, if I understand correctly, this wraps us up here on your, sort of your high-level discussion of implementing a methodology. Any sort of final words of advice to folks who are really considering this and
Yes.
moving forward in a serious fashion?
Sure, Pete. It's a fragile thing. With turnover of management and staff, the practices can, and pressure like a recession, the practices can be abandoned and one can retrograde to lower levels of practices. So one of the responsibilities of this steering committee is to continuously point benefit of using our standard practices to bottom line. Number of projects completed per year, impact on the bottom line per product if we're in a product environment. Thinking about a Central American bank, one of the things they did annually is quantify their benefit based on their investment. And this one year, they had responsibility for a portfolio of 20 projects. And all 20 came in on time. And they did a calculation of the cost of 2 months late on every one of those projects, which was a pretty conservative estimate, dividing it by the cost of the department, and showed a return to the bank president of 550% on the investment of that project management office.
So nothing to shake a stick at.
That's right. And a final comment from me on this would be that it's human nature to cut corners. And senior management has to be vigilant in looking for evidence that the project management processes are being followed, and not let a little bit go by, a little bit more go by, because pretty soon people will be picking and choosing what do they feel like doing, not what they need to do.
And then it's no longer a methodology in the first place.
Managers have to learn 3 very powerful words. When they hear, I'm just too busy to plan, do I really have to do one? The answer is yes, you do. And so many of these challenging answers can be answered with those 3 simple words. Yes, you do.
And that's the end. And with that, we will end the show. On behalf of Scott Lissit and John Patton, I am Pete Wright. Thank you for listening to another episode of Ask Cadence.